Is having an opinion and not knowing the same thing?
Yes, I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to clarify. About a month ago, I had an epiphany, because when people, I talk a lot about not knowing and about non-duality. So I would say not knowing and non-duality is sort of the same. And when people would ask me what is non-duality or not knowing, I would say, well, you have to experience it. Because if I describe it, that's knowing. And I have to use a dual language. And about a month ago, or maybe it was 2 months ago, I was in the airport going somewhere to do a workshop. I was going to Joan Halifax's to do a workshop. And it struck me, I had the opinion that opinions are the language of not knowing. They're the language of non-duality, because opinions are non-dual. If you say an opinion is right or wrong, then it's not an opinion anymore. You've taken it into duality. And so for 40 years, I've been telling people, you can't talk about not knowing and non-duality. You have to experience it. You could talk about it, but you got to experience it. And now I was thinking, hey, opinions is the language. So I can talk about non-duality and about not knowing, as long as I talk as opinions and not as truths. That was, for me, it didn't strike other people as a bigger thing, but for me it was huge. Huge. You can't imagine, after 40 years thinking one way, and all of a sudden it opened up a whole, just opened things up for me. So thank you for asking that.
And I have a second question. You say that if you are in that state of oneness, that you have no choice. If you see a homeless person, you simply have no choice. You have to take care of him.
Yeah.
There is no matter of choice. You have to do it.
Yeah.
Then what is duty?
It just evoked this for me. We have a cafe that we started and that feeds low-income people every Saturday. It's a beautiful thing with music and counsel and all kinds of things and the best food in the city of Greenfield. And I was leading counsel one day and a woman spoke and she said, I'm a Quaker. And the way I grew up, we grew up with, she didn't use duty, but service. Service was the word. And the way I grew up is everything you did was to be of service. And the question was, yes, but is it of service? That's the way I was raised. And she said, one day, I don't know what happened, I just realized that from now on, I'm just coming out of my heart, out of love. And from then on, the whole wording of to be of service, or the question, stopped. And she said, this morning, I got up, I'm going to cook with Kirsten for all these people. I don't ask anymore, am I being of service? I'm there because I like Kirsten, she's fun, we have a great time cooking, and it's just clear. I don't have to ask that question anymore. So it's like almost like the term service became irrelevant to her. But I don't know if that answers your question about duty, but that's what this evoked.
Yeah, when you raised it, what came up in my head is a little similar to what you're saying. And by the way, that idea of that cafe, I mean, it feeds homeless and low income, but also people with money. And when you enter it, you can't tell who's who. The people that are serving could be homeless, could be wealthy people. The people that are eating could be homeless, could be wealthy. It was something that came up to me out of bearing witness. It came up to me 25 years ago when I did my first street retreat, and I was fed. I went to soup kitchens in different places, and I could feel people with love, feeding us or whatever. But I could also feel that they felt they were superior to us. We were inferior, and it was a huge loss of dignity. So I sort of made a vow at that time that someday I would open up a soup kitchen, but not call it a soup kitchen, a cafe with music, and you wouldn't bring kids to those soup kitchens. People were afraid to. We would have a place that was friendly for kids, and where you couldn't tell who's who. Anyway, that's the cafe idea is now spreading around the country, hopefully. But when you raised it, what struck me, the first thing that hit me, it was when you said duty. I thought devotion, and then I thought bhakti yoga. Those are just words that came up. So I wouldn't use the word that it's my duty, but it's my devotion. That feels, somehow if it's my duty, I think that's dualistic. Whereas devotion, I'm thinking devotion in the sense of bhakti, which I would feel would be non-dualistic.
And service too is dualistic because you're serving someone. So that's a word we also have some difficulty with.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have only time for one more.
Thank you so much. Let's go down a little bit.
You could stand on it.
Or I could get taller. I'll work on that.
Levitate, man.
For me, things make sense when they're specific. And you talked a little bit about the Vietnam War. And I think one of the reasons why the Vietnam War, the demonstrators brought the Vietnam War, among other things, to an end was because their lives were on the line. We had the draft. We don't have the draft anymore. I think that's a terrible thing. And there wasn't this question, even though we're all one, we don't always act as one of duty because it's like I would die, my brother would die, my father would die. And right now we're in this terrible situation in the United States, among other places, where people are being shot by policemen, for example. I just came from New York and I was in a number of demonstrations, and there, what I felt on the street was incredible sadness and incredible anger, but also the need to be together on the street. And there was this awful line that we would chant, Black Lives Matter. And it's so awful because why would that ever need to be spoken? Why wouldn't every life matters? And so if you could just bring what you're saying down to the level of a specific and not to a level of distance also, because it could be me being shot on the street. What do I do, right? You know, so it's not service, it's not duty, it's me.
You want to do it or you want?
I'll just say people, especially lately when we're teaching together or whatever, or even separately, so many people come up and they say, look at this world is breaking apart. And this is happening, and this is happening, and I've never felt like things are so bad as they are now. And so it's like I feel like we make this big
No, I'm not saying.
I'm not saying you did.
Saying at all.
Yeah, I'm not saying you did. I'm saying, but what this evokes for me, that thing of what do we do? Everything is so big. I actually agree with you completely. There's something very important about bringing it down to specifics and something very clear. And I was just sharing with Bernie today just something I read, about the big Catholic charities and what they do some wonderful work with the poor and how they're not able, and a lot of, they're encountering a lot of failure. And yet when they really studied the situation, what they discovered was that poor people actually need very little to get out of poverty. When they actually looked at what happens, they said, you know, what brings people down is that she's working 2 jobs, and she's raising her own children alone, you know, and then the car breaks down, and there's no money for the car, or the mother left, and there's no child care. It's small, very precise things that discourage people and cause them to leave high school, leave college, stop working. And when we worked in Yonkers, a lot of women worked for us who were single parents, and they worked 2 jobs. And you could see that they would not come. They would lose their job, not because they were bad, but because something small didn't work out. And it was interesting, and when they realized this, they said, oh, so we don't need a huge program. What we're gonna do is we'll take a small group. We're gonna put aside maybe $500 for each. Discretion, if something really bad happens. But more important, we're gonna give each person 1 social worker, and that person will be on hand to help them find childcare if something happened, give them $200 if the car broke down, give them something if the electric bill is higher, and we're gonna work with them like that for a few years. And all those people finished college, and they did what they were going to do to get out of that cycle of poverty. So it was just kind of an interesting finding for them, and it spoke a lot to me. That we think in terms of the big things, poverty, violence, racism, these are big words. When you bring it down to small things, it's really small and doable how we can help each other. Almost anybody can do it. I don't care how small a community you're a part of. Somebody can adopt a person to do that for them. So that if you get into trouble with this, and this is going to ruin your plan, we're going to step in and help you with this, or with that, or with that. When you bring it down to specifics, it's like Bernie said, then you're bearing witness and you know just what to do. The right action is so clear.
So in this case, what to do with the police?
So this kind of question is raised to me a lot, and what I do, I can only tell you what I do. What I do always is I bring these 3 tenets. I try to not have any pre-ideas. This guy's bad, that's bad, this system's bad. I try to just listen to what's happening. And then I go deeper and try to bear witness to what's going on. And I let the actions arise. They arise. And that's what I do. I do not rant and rave. I do not just do actions out of some plan that I had before. I always do it that way, whatever the case is. And that's very specific, and it's very large.
Thank you.
Okay, I see the cookies have come. That's part of Hanukkah, and I'm sure it's part of yeah, anyway. So we shall get off and see some of you tomorrow, except for those that are going home. If you're going home, have a great voyage. And if you're staying here, and we'll get to my second 20 years.